How do some people stay sharp and strong and vibrant well into their 80s, 90s, or maybe even beyond? Well, today we're cracking the code on super aging. Is it genetics? Is it lifestyle? Just what is it? Well, stick around because we're unlocking the psychological secrets to aging like a rock star. And welcome to Off the Couch, where psychology meets everyday life. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, psychologist, here with Brian Gomez, producer.
Hey, happy Monday, you guys.
Hey, Brian. And we also have Kyle on the board. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, how's it going, Dr. Greg?
Good to see you. So today on Off the Couch, we're talking about super aging, what you can do to get out of that rocking chair and dance to some rock music or even go rock climbing. It's a little overdone on the rocks, huh?
No, I'm just glad you're explaining what super aging is. I've never heard of it.
Super aging. We'll come back to that, but basically super aging is being able to be like have a great life well into your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. You know, a lot of people think that once you get older, you're just supposed to sit in a rocking chair and do nothing, and nothing is further from the truth. But first, I do need to talk about something. On February 14th, 2025, the Trump administration announced the termination of approximately 1,165 National Institutes of Health, or NIH, employees, accounting for about 6% of its workforce. This action is part of a broader effort between the Department of Health within the Department of Health and Human Services, that's the HHS, to reduce its workforce, with a total of around 5,200 employees being dismissed across various health agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, and the Food and Drug Administration. I had to talk about this because it's extremely concerning to lose these career personnel, and they're continuing the cuts. This is just the first round of cuts. But it's not just the cuts that are going on. They actually did something kind of nefarious too at the NIH, which is the NIH funds a great deal of research, and we're a show about research. And this is the funding of research in universities and academic settings. They announced major funding cuts. They set a new policy saying that they put a 15% cap on indirect research costs, reducing current funding by billions. And I had to talk about this because I don't think people really understand what indirect costs are. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. They think, well, you know, we should only be funding the research itself, not the indirect costs. But it's a formality. We have to call these indirect costs because it's paying for things that support the research, and I'll talk about that. The scientists now are warning that the cuts will negatively impact medical research and innovation. So NIH's justification for the cuts, or really DOGE, I guess, NIH aims to redirect funds towards scientific research. That's the stated intent. But they also expect to save over $4 billion annually, which kind of indicates that they're not redirecting the funds. They're just going to cut the funds because you can't save money if you're redirecting the funds into research. But the indirect costs are things like overhead costs, such as lab maintenance, administrations are going to see major reductions. The White House argues that this aligns with private foundation funding standards. Now, I had to take some issue with that, having worked in this world. And I was just kind of a cog in the machine. But what we understood, we did a lot of grant applications, and the ones to NIH were really these big money funding that would fund major research that we'd be in partnership with them. We also had National Institutes of Drug Abuse, and we had other grants as well and we'd work in partnership with these agencies to be able to produce this research. I was at UCLA. And our indirect costs help fund basically everything we did that wasn't, say, very directly related to doing your analysis, or maybe sitting with the people giving the direct interviews. It just was kind of everything around it. So it all went in to support what we were doing. We weren't making a profit on it. This is how we did it. And private foundations were usually small amounts of money, not big amounts of money, but small, that would give us really direct funding to do like individual things. And it'd be very welcome money to be able to do those things. But that overhead cost could never be sustained by these kinds of small research. Now, I don't know how that is for other labs. Like I have friends who work in biomedical sciences and other things. I don't know how it works there, but I can only imagine things are approximately the same across the board. So this was a major cut. Scientists fear that the cuts will slow cancer research, Alzheimer's research, Parkinson's research. Research institutions rely on these funds for essential lab infrastructure. Critics call the move a self-inflicted wound that weakens U.S. innovation. Universities like Harvard and Johns Hopkins will be heavily affected. You know, I believe also University of Alabama. Alabama has a very large research. Alabama is being really hit by these cuts. Because they had one of their major employers is doing health research and doing health. So these kinds of things are really hurting some of the most, needy states out there. So it's kind of shocking to me. The role of indirect costs in research, just to go over, I think I said lab maintenance and utilities, research equipment and facilities, administrative support for grant compliance, which actually that's a big deal. We always need that administrative person to make sure the money is being spent the right way and everything's going well. It also is used for patient safety, research security, hazardous waste disposal. And so, this is a very big thing. Institutions warn that these cuts will limit research capabilities. The cuts may shift research funding dependency toward private sectors. That's also a concern because then you're going to have people who are kind of, basically pulling strings. Because a company, if they fund research, they're going to want their company to come out looking good. That's the problem we have with pharmaceutical research. So. Possible reduction in U.S. global competitiveness in biomedical advancement. We also pulled out of the WHO, or the World Health Organization. So health-wise, I'm concerned. I know we have so many other big things that are happening. Our government is cutting so many things, and they're doing it haphazardly and somewhat arbitrarily, or very arbitrarily. And they think that's good. From an organizational psychological standpoint, it's not good because this actually inflicts wounds on organizations that take years and years to ever heal. And it instills terror into the workforce that if they weren't fired, that they could be fired at any day. That's not a good thing when you work in an organization. Policy discussions are needed to balance cost-cutting and research sustainability, and there are calls right now for the NIH specifically to reconsider the drastic reductions, but that's not NIH's call. I mean, it's coming from the top. So this was extremely concerning to me. A man named Mark Becker from the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities said this will slow medical research breakthroughs, cancer, diabetes, heart disease. Oh, I think I'm just repeating myself. Critics view the cuts as a major blow. So,
I just find it weird. It's such a important field that, you would want to keep your citizens, safe and healthy. So it just seems kind of, we see what's happening, but it's still like, dang, they really don't care.
That's the feeling you get, yeah. And I think that maybe some of the people making decisions don't understand the impact of this research, and maybe they will never understand. I think when you're very wealthy, you're insulated somewhat. You can afford to buy health care. You can afford to go anywhere. If the best treatment is in Switzerland, you can fly to Switzerland. But this is not going to be the case for the majority of American citizens.
Well, that's
the overwhelming majority.
It's going to have to be all outsourced at that point if we're not doing any, research and advancing in any way. People are going to have to go elsewhere to really, like you just said, and it's going to be only people that can afford it. We already see it happen, like when people go to Mexico to get procedures or go to the dentist in Mexico just because it's a lot cheaper, at this point, I feel like they said it properly, that we're going to fall back in our spot where we are in the world.
I'm extremely concerned about that. I mean, it's really not a good thing. So we'll just hold on tight. I felt the need to talk about that because it is of such dire concern. And we're certain to see more coming. It's only been 2 weeks or so. Certainly a lot more stuff is about to come down the line. So let's talk about, we're going to move into a somewhat brighter subject. We're going to talk about super aging. I know this was a brand new concept for both myself and other people, but this is something that's coming out of research in a University of New South Wales. This is in Australia at their Center for Healthy Brain Aging. Just to know that, and I've talked about this before, that Australia and England specifically have incredible national health systems, and they do incredible research. So we always like the exciting research that comes from these places. This was done by, the Center for Healthy Brain Aging in University of New South Wales. And this was published in Activities, Adaptation, and Aging. And the research explores perspectives on super aging. What do you think about when you think about super aging, Brian?
Well, we were talking about this earlier. It sounded like it was a disease where you're aging extremely fast.
Well, I guess it does sound like that.
Yeah.
But no, it actually is. When we think about it, I think a lot of people in the scientific community identified super aging as people with super cognitive abilities, people who don't have cognitive decline as they get older. But that's not how most older people define it. And so they decided instead to look at how older people define super aging. They did interviews and focus groups with 39 Australian adults aged 65 to 101. Participants were living independently without any cognitive decline. So they pre-selected this group, said, what is super aging to you? And they aimed to define super aging from the older adult's perspective, and they actually got a much better definition than cognitive ability. I mean, cognitive ability was still in there. They looked for high levels of physical and mental activity, so they looked for that. But they looked for functional independence, that people could do things and to have high social engagement. And the third thing, and we'll talk about this a lot, is a positive attitude toward aging specifically, but positive attitude seems to be the best. Differences from previous research: traditional research focuses on elite cognitive abilities. Older adults emphasize functional independence and engagement. They have attitude and motivation is playing a critical role, and there's no clear definition yet, though, on what we call super aging. So these 39 adults gave a definition. I think it is a worthy one, but it isn't necessarily the settled one. But we do have to come up with a term, because we're not in a rocking chair at 65 anymore. I mean, we're out doing things. People are continuing to work. People are having kids sometimes into the later years. People are traveling, running around. There are many things that people can do well beyond 60, 70, 80 years old.
Yeah, I mean, and people aren't dying as early, too. I mean, people are living longer.
Yes.
So that's a big part of it that's helping.
Yes, not dying is really helping things quite a bit. But that's also because we have a good healthcare system. I mean, I hate to go back to the beginning, but yikes if we start compromising on our healthcare system. Our healthcare system has enough problems. We talked about it with insurance. Insurance is a significant impediment to getting healthcare. It's actually an impediment. It's supposed to make it easy, but a lot of people can't afford it. They're also looking at the latest budget, by the way, is looking at cutting Medicaid 100%. They did something clever. They're saying they want to reduce Medicaid, but the amount they want to reduce it by is the amount that it's funded by. So I thought that was kind of a clever workaround in that latest budget. But nonetheless, I mean, who knows how this will all play out? I mean, there's going to be pushback, I'm sure. But to even state that, let's get rid of Medicaid. Or let's try to make people with Medicaid work. That's all fine and dandy. But if you're receiving Medicaid and you're sick, you can't really work. So I don't know how quite that works, but that's just me. Actually, Medicaid funds 20% of the United States. 20%. That includes the elderly, because some elderly are on Medicaid as well as Medicare. That includes young children, people in poverty. It includes sometimes working adults who don't get adequate medical help. Say they have a job at Walmart and it doesn't give them enough hours. They don't have any benefits. So they have to also apply for public benefits to be able to supplant or to be able to help them.
I just hope they know what they're doing. Because it seems like it's going to all fall apart.
I mean, it looks like that right now.
Yeah.
And organizationally, we're certainly headed in that direction. And maybe that is the desire. Maybe they do just want to blow everything up and start over, which I don't know why. But, I mean, I like complaining about things, but usually for the purpose of creating change, not saying everything's terrible and awful, which I've never believed, and then starting from what? That, you know, they're not health experts who are doing those cuts.
I don't think any of them are really educated enough.
Well, I mean, you know, people give a lot of credence to people who make a great deal of money. I think that's
Very
just part
true.
of the issue. Let's talk about super aging. There are 5 components, so I'm just going to pull out the research. It was kind of basically, I read the list, but attitude and motivation is the number one thing that seemed to have come out of these focus groups that came out. Attitude and motivation. Number 2 is cognitive and mental abilities. Number 3 is physical abilities. Number 4 is social and community engagement. And number 5 is health and longevity. So we're going to be focusing on number 1 and number 4, that we're going to be focusing on attitude and motivation and social and community engagement. Now, you say, because Greg, you know, maybe 3 of them actually cover in psychology, not only the social and community engagement and attitude and motivation, but also cognitive and mental abilities. And I would say, yes, that is true. But we'd have to do like a whole show based on how to deal with cognition and also to deal with some of the diseases that cause cognitive decline. So those aren't as controllable. Some of those are a little out of our reach. It's inside the skull. You can stay active and learn new things, etc., but we can do that with our social and community engagement, and that can help stimulate the brain as well. Okay, so let's talk about attitude and motivation. I found a study that was released, ironically, this same week. This is a playful approach to life, something called lemonading. Now, if you know me, I hate these terms that kids are coming out with. These old kids. I can't stand these terms that the kids are coming out with, like gray rocking and quiet quitting.
It's not me.
And here we have a new one called lemonading.
But I do love lemonade.
I do love lemonade.
But tell me about lemonade.
Lemonading is really when with your attitude and approach to life that you change lemons into lemonade. I guess they had to make that a verb of some sort. Like, I'm lemonading. See me lemonade? I don't know.
But that's kind of already been a thing, right? Like,
yeah, but everyone has to make everything a word. I mean, we're not going to go off. Actually, the concept is excellent. I just don't like the term. So I'm just being bitchy over here, just being an old man. Sorry about that, Kyle. Is just brand new to us. Where are you from, Kyle?
I'm from Long Island.
Oh, Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah.
Gotta get me some coffee.
Coffee on Long Island. Yes, I love it. Well, good for you. Well, welcome. Welcome to the LA palm trees.
Yeah, thank you. It's awesome to be here. I've only been here about a month so far. Loving it still.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So wait, did you miss the fires? No, you were here during them.
I came in on the planes and I saw them from the planes.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's talk about how do we make that into lemonade, and that's a tough one. But let's talk about let's talk about this concept, and then maybe we can think about how to turn things into a more optimistic view. Scientists have found that playfulness helps people cope with adversity. And this concept of playfulness really is what it comes down to. It's taking life a little bit lighter. You know, I can take things pretty heavy myself. You know that, Brian. I mean, I can be like, oh, woe is me. I mean, look at the world is, imploding, or what's going on. Anyway, the study conducted during the COVID-19 lockdown explored playful individuals and how they adapted. What I loved about this, COVID-19 gave us a great deal of really interesting research. So a lot of good has come out of that, and this is one of those studies that really was exciting to me. Playfulness, according to the study, playfulness itself fosters optimism, creativity, and resilience. So people who are playful really see the world very differently and are able to handle adversity much better. The concept of eliminating is the ability to generate positive experiences despite challenges. Playfulness and resilience are closely connected to that concept. And more playful people actively adjust to difficult situations and find new solutions. That was really interesting to me because didn't Einstein say, well, he said imagination is the key to intelligence, didn't he? Something like that. But he also advocated play for creativity.
I'm a big believer in that. I think as adults we should be playing because we don't play anymore. I feel like we all grow up and then we just stop doing playful things like as a kid, that I'm like, I feel like it steals the joy out of life sometimes.
That is right. We've got to have more fun. Oh my God, we got to have more fun on this show. Let's, you guys, we got to break out the booze and have some fun.
Cartwheels around.
If that's all there is. No, that's a song. So anyway,
before my time.
it was before mine too, but I still know it. Research methodology. They surveyed 503 adults in the United States during February 2021. If you remember, this was a full year into the pandemic. We had been a full year at that point, and they surveyed them. Participants rated their own playfulness and reported on their own emotional responses. So what they found is more. I'm just going to repeat. More playful participants were optimistic about the future. They expected a successful vaccine rollout and life returning to normal. This is what was going on at the time. Do you remember? This is right when vaccines were starting to become available. I think they first went to medical personnel maybe the very end of the year, and then in January it was primarily going to those groups like the medical personnel and maybe the most needy. But in February they started going out to the public a little bit more. They were hard to get, those appointments. But these people were like, yay, successful vaccine rollout and life's going to go back to normal. Playful individuals did not distort reality at all, but just rather focused on the positive possibilities. So it's not that they saw the world not as it was. They saw it as it was. They just focused on the good. This is really interesting to me because we've talked about this before, previous quarantine research. So there was a research done on quarantines for the not for COVID-19, but it was for the earlier SARS breakout we had that was primarily hitting us in Canada. And they did research on the people who were quarantined with that. It was a much smaller breakout. But they researched those people who were quarantined. And what stunned me about that research is the people who did worse had negative attitudes about the quarantine and believed that they didn't get clear information. So they basically were mad about being there and were, bitching and complaining, etc. Certainly they're right to do that, and they can certainly believe that they didn't get adequate information as part of the quarantine. But what that did is it created higher levels of depression and PTSD in those people.
So by having a bad attitude, that's what happens.
It made them kind of turn out a little bit worse.
Dang. I mean, it makes sense, Sometimes you're just in crappy moments and it's like, you got to just make the best of it.
Sometimes. Playful individuals found creative ways to adapt to pandemic restrictions. They modified their schedules, explored new places, and sought fun. They experienced greater joy and engagement in daily life. Do you guys miss the pandemic a little bit? Do you, Kyle?
I mean, it was easier to pass my tests at the time online.
Why was it easier?
Well, you could just open up another tab.
Oh, my God. Well, I didn't even think of that. How about for you, Brian?
Oh, I had it rough. So I do not miss it. The only thing I do miss is the traffic where there was nobody on the streets.
Oh, my God.
That was amazing.
I love that.
But yeah, I was not one of the lucky ones that was so playful and everything.
Well, I mean, there were things I started to appreciate, and I started to appreciate, wait a minute, I used to be someone who always was going out and doing things constantly. And at some point I was like, oh, this isn't so bad, having a quieter life. So that part I started to like.
Yeah. There was just so much going on at the time that it was just, yeah.
No, I'm not negating that. There was a lot going on. These people who explored new places sought the fun. They experienced greater joy and engagement in their daily life. And that ties into the social engagement. So if you want to make your own lemonade, if you want to take your lemons and make them into lemonade, engage in physical activities that bring you joy. Be open to new experiences. That goes to openness to new experiences, which is we've talked about before. It's actually one of the most helpful personality qualities all of us can have. Surround yourself with playful and positive people. And playfulness is about mindset. It's not just about playing games. It's about mindset. So have some fun.
And playing, I feel like, doesn't have to be like playing outside, but it can be like a hobby or creating, or, you know, if you have a skill you like to do that's not really your job, you know, that you can put some time and pour into it.
And though that study was applicable to all people, we're sticking with the theme of super aging. Imagine how people who even they perhaps stop working at a later age, if they just stay in their house and do nothing, they're not going to thrive. So it is good to get out and to engage and to play and to have a good attitude. And aging sucks. I don't know if you guys know that.
I don't know. I've been super excited to hit 30, so I'm like, I was looking forward to it. I know people hate it,
30.
but I'm like, dude, 30s are cool.
30.
Well, I mean, but I feel like even when I'm older, I still want to be like the super hot, like older guy, you know? So yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm a hot older guy, but mostly because of temperature. Mostly that. Except when I'm cold.
It's different. I feel like if you don't have like that mindset, you are going to feel ugly. You are going to feel like you're aging, you know?
Yeah. It's good to have fun. It's good to go out and do things. So I think that's great.
And when you get older, I hear there's this thing called old man strength that I'm looking forward to hopefully somehow getting.
Well, being an old man, I can tell you that diminishes your old man strength. Because I used to feel like I was stronger than I am at this moment. I don't know.
Maybe you need to go outside and play.
Oh, good point. So let's go to the second. Remember, I talked about 5 components: attitude and motivation, which we talked about, cognitive, mental, physical abilities, social and community engagement, and health and longevity. We're going to be now talking about number 4, social and community engagement. There was a study that showed power of small acts of kindness. So when we do small acts of kindness, it can create great deals of help for us. Even in times of political and social unrest, human connection makes a difference. These create a ripple effect leading to broader social change. I was interested in this research. I'll talk about it a little bit, but primarily because we're seeing such negativity in the world. We see people who just thrive on lack of empathy, on hurting other people, on saying negative things about other people, putting other people down. It's really shocking to me. And it's coming from the top. When we see attitudes play out, when we're talking about attitudes, if the leader of a country is saying negative things, it makes it not only permissible, but preferable for people to say negative things. So that attitude spills down, unfortunately. So it's going to take us to be able to push back and be positive and do kind acts for each other, even though we might be tempted to just reflect that negative sentiment that's coming from the top. No?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, ideally, yeah, that's what we would want to do. But, my little heart.
No. You can certainly be upset, and that's fine. I'm not saying don't be upset.
No, but I do like the motion of just, doing good things for each other. It does feel good to do good things. I hope people know that.
I am a strong believer, and here's why. We talked about cognitive dissonance in the past. I won't leave you hanging. Cognitive dissonance is when your actions and beliefs don't align. So if you're doing something kind for somebody and you don't really like them as much, you become dissonant. Your brain starts to go, wait a minute, I did something nice for the person. I thought I didn't like them. And your brain's more likely to change in direction of the action, more likely to change in direction to say, maybe I do think they're okay. So that dissonance actually helps us to realign with people. So that if you can start doing kind acts for people, it can start helping you to feel less fearful and more connected with people around you. Does that make sense? Strong relationships motivate people to hear and understand differing perspectives, and connection leads to empathy, increasing social harmony. So research on small acts of connection, these studies show political divides soften through personal interactions. Friendships between historically divided groups improve perceptions. So we've talked about many times, I strongly believe you can have very good friendships with people who have very different beliefs than you do, that the friendship will start to help to improve the divide. I know.
Even right now.
It's a tough time.
I feel like
It's a tough time. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's not a tough time. I'm speaking ideally.
Okay, ideally. Okay, that's better.
But I certainly try to, live to do what I preach, practice what I preach. Reflecting on others' positive qualities reduces prejudice towards outgroups. This is kind of a helpful thing to do too. Like if you can look at somebody else that you might be having a negative opinion about and think, what are their positive qualities right now? I do like that flannel shirt. You could think, I don't know. Like it could be something,
I don't know. It takes me a minute to get over if I have a negative view on somebody. I'm trying to put that in my head, and I'm like, it's not working.
Small acts of kindness. So ripple effect of kindness. Small interpersonal acts create larger social change. Social networks influence attitudes and behavior and connections across groups. Programs promoting anti-discrimination benefit from strong individual relationships. So, the relationship is what it all comes down to. It's always about the relationship. You could do this in mental health recovery. You can have intentional community building, doing small acts of kindness, just to have people go out there and do things. I, in fact, did an organizational training. I used to do these, but I remember getting pushback from one of the staffs for this very thing. I advocated that they do something nice every day that they don't tell anyone about, like maybe add paper to the copier or make coffee in the coffee machine. Something at the office workplace that's just a little contribution that they don't have to ask or tell anyone about, to create a nicer space, because that people will notice, oh, these nice things are being done, and then that will improve their attitude as well. But these people were not as thrilled with that idea. Just one or two people.
Even like volunteering would be good, right?
Volunteering is excellent. It's probably one of the best antidepressants you can get. It's really incredible. Especially working with people or working with animals. Working with living things is incredible. Yeah. So, yeah. But the problem, we talk about loneliness, is that money can get in the way. This was another piece of research I found this week. This is from the Ohio State University. They found a connection between financial security and loneliness. This was interesting because I had actually never entertained this connection, and this makes perfect sense. We're looking at older adults as well, and they said older adults with insufficient emergency savings experienced higher levels of loneliness. Now remember, social connection is one of our keys to super aging. So people who are experiencing more financial distress are going to have trouble aging well. Findings suggest that financial distress may contribute to social isolation. The study overview here is the Ohio State University. They examined 7,149 adults aged 65 and older during the COVID-19 pandemic. This was during April and June of 2020. This was at the beginning when it was pretty hot. They investigated financial situations, loneliness levels, and pandemic-related activities. I think one of the key interesting things about this study is they found that people use credit cards because of an emergency debt, or they didn't have money if they had to pay over time. They just couldn't pay for a $400 emergency debt. Then that brought them to be more lonely. They retreated more. And I thought this was really fascinating because we want people to be out and engaged and connected to other people, but these people sort of self-selected and stayed in more. They did not find this was at all related to the pandemic. That's what I thought was really interesting. They tried to differentiate pandemic and pandemic-related behaviors, measured it later when things started to ease. There were no differences in their findings. So, whether they used a mask or practiced social isolation, or whether they, when they lifted the, sanctions or whatever, when they were saying it's cool to go out, it didn't really change. It was really just the money that made people feel more lonely. So lockdown restrictions didn't significantly impact at all. Easing of the lockdowns didn't work. I was just going through all of that. Emergency savings can help mitigate stress and social isolation. We know about stress, but social isolation, I just thought this was really fascinating. And this goes to, another concern of mine, if we're going to, and they've been talking about it, cutting medical care, but cutting Social Security and other public assistance, especially in older adults. We can see how critical it is. It's very critical for older adults to feel like they have enough financial support going on. And these are people often who either can't work or have difficulty getting a job because of their age and maybe limited abilities, so like physical abilities. So, addressing financial distresses can improve mental health and well-being in aging populations. So, let's go through one last thing to Linda, a little bit on an off note. 7 easy ways to have a better friendships and feel less lonely. I got this from a Vox article, VOX. It's a newspaper, and I know this isn't scientific, but I thought this was pretty damn good. Number 1. Talk to strangers. Engaging with strangers can boost happiness. Opportunities include chatting with a barista, cashier, or fellow commuter. I'm a big fan of having a pleasant conversation with somebody you're at when you're buying something.
But as long as there's not a line behind you, because I am one person that'll be like, shut up, I need to get my order and leave.
Well, you can say hi. Thank you, very nice.
But there's some that will keep chatting, and you're just like,
yeah,
sorry.
Not. You don't ask how the kids are during that conversation. Okay, number 2, focus on quality interactions. Meaningful conversations can enhance well-being. So, the 4 types of quality conversations are meaningful talk, like you're talking about something a little bit deeper, catching up with a friend, expressing affection, also joking. Joking is a quality interaction. So one quality interaction a day can make a difference. Tell a joke.
And I even have that a lot when I'm at the dog park. I'm forced to interact with people.
Yes.
And when you're talking about your pets, it's like it's something you love. So it's like deep.
Excellent.
In that sense,
But still value small talk.
Oh, yeah.
So valuing small talk is number 3. Small talk can enhance social connection. Brief, casual exchanges contribute to a sense of belonging. People often don't put value in small talk, and I think it is one of the more valuable things. Just saying, hi, how you doing? Oh, good. That's fine. That's great. You don't have to go beyond that. If you do want to go beyond that, then if somebody says, how was your weekend? Say, oh, it was good. And you can go, I went to the movies. That, kind of leave them a thread that they can pull. Oh, what movie did you see? Oh, I saw blah, blah, blah.
Or it's even nice, like at the gym, when you see somebody you see often, they're like, oh, hey, how are you,
Yeah.
It's like, somebody not really know, but like it's somebody you're always seeing.
It's a familiar face. Number 4, engage with a diverse range of people. Interact with different types of people. It increases your own well-being. Avoid echo chambers. Exposure to varied experiences fosters empathy and understanding. Echo chambers are extremely dangerous, is why I think social media is a problem. So, number 5, make and keep, emphasis on the keep, social plans. Intentional socializing improves relationships. Keeping commitments helps strengthen relationships. So keep those social plans. Don't just make them, keep them.
I know, which is kind of hard sometimes when you're like, yeah, that sounds so fun. And then it comes like the day of and you're like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed.
I have a rule that when I agree to do something, I follow through.
You do. And you stick to it.
I complain and bitch sometimes, but I do follow through.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Number 6, balance technology use. So passive social media consumption, like, sitting there and scrolling through Instagram, that has the least benefit for social connection. The least. Face-to-face interaction is the most effective way to have well-being. So online-only connections may only satisfy some social needs, not fully satisfy them. So try to get as much actual face-to-face time as possible. Number 7, embrace alone time. That is maybe a little counterintuitive, but we've got to balance our being out there buzzing around with the crowd and embracing alone time. It's good to have solitude. Alone time helps you recharge. Solitude and socialization work well for overall well-being.
I love my alone time.
I do too. Good. So that brings us to the end of the show. That was kind of interesting, didn't you think, Brian?
Yeah.
Are you ready for aging now?
I've been ready.
You have?
I feel like I'm going to actually age well,
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so I'm excited. And I feel healthy. I feel like most people around mid-30s are like, oh, I hate it or whatever. And I'm like, I'm cool. I can't wait till I'm like 40 and then see what I'm looking like and what I'm doing, Yeah.
Looking like?
Yeah, because I feel like I'm just going to, I'm going to look well, I think, into the 40s and 50s and hopefully 60s. If I can rock it through 60s still, I'm like, damn. Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, I'm doing soft rock over here. Well, that brings us to the end. Yeah, it's good. So, and I hope you have some hope too as well, Kyle. Thank you for being with us. That you're going to be able to age well out there on the island.
Of course. Lots of sun.
Yes. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much. Reminder to like, subscribe, to give us 5 stars. Links to the studies, go to my YouTube page, youtube.com/Dr. Greg. You can also hit us up on the socials with topics you'd like to cover or questions. We like questions. Hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. Brian monitors those, don't you, Brian?
Yes.
And this is Dr. Greg and Brian and also Kyle bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.